Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq, with daily insight on the Nasdaq-100 index, or the NDX, which is made up of 100 of the largest domestic and international non-financial innovative companies listed on the Nasdaq stock market. The NDX has been the barometer for U.S. large cap growth and also one of the best performing indexes over the last decade and a half, not to mention one of the most liquid index ecosystems in the world. Joining me this Thursday afternoon is Joyce, Managing Director on Nasdaq's Market Intelligence Desk, for an update on technical levels to watch in the Nasdaq-100 and other major markets that we watch. Brian, it's great to see you again. Happy New Year. And let's get into some fresh levels that you're watching in the Nasdaq-100.
Hi, Jill. Thanks for having me on. So, yes, the market's off to the races again this year. The Nasdaq-100 is just about flat, actually. It's the smaller cap indices, the value groups that have been taken off. So the prior high made all the way back in August was around 12,440. And we're a little bit above that. We're at 12,932. So if we have any pullbacks from here, that's the key level I'm watching, 12,440 prior pivot there. And then just below around the 50-day moving average, 12,200. Above, we're just about on the cusp of making new all-time highs. On Monday of this week, if I zoom in, you can see we had a pretty wide range. We gapped up to new highs. Opening print was 12,950. That is now the all-time high. And then we sold off throughout the remainder of the session. The last 2 days, we traded within the band on Monday, the January 4th, and kind of consolidating, I guess, this move from November into December. And now look today, with today's strong move, we're up 2.5%. We're about to make new highs. So we're right there on the cusp of making new highs. We had a brief consolidation. Yesterday, the tech space, kind of sold off a little bit on the political news, the elections out of Georgia, excuse me. I wasn't sure why that happened. I think maybe it may have just been a short-term reaction where what was going on is, if I flip over here quickly to the 10-year yield, yesterday the 10-year Treasury yield broke out from a 6-month range. That's typically good for cyclicals like financials. I know the bank index yesterday was at more than 7%. Energy stocks do well there. Industrials, overall value stocks. So if we look here at the value index, we can see the Russell 1000 value index is finally breaking out from its prior highs early in 2020. So this is a significant move for value that's been strongly underperforming growth, which is largely what we see in the Nasdaq-100. I think growth outperformed value last year by 35%. It was an all-time high. So it's good. It's healthy to see that rotation. It's been going on. It's been taking place since the start of the fourth quarter, and now it's ongoing here in early 2021. But I wouldn't certainly write off growth and technology and mainly the Nasdaq-100 just yet. It's been a long-term strong performer. And my last chart here I'll show you is the ratio of growth over value. You can see since, I should say value over growth, since mid-2006 up until late 2020, you can see this long-term trend where value is underperforming growth. It's bouncing a little bit here, but still has a long ways to go. This 40-week moving average at a minimum is what it needs to get back above, and it needs to, in my opinion, do more than that. We see at times it briefly gets back above it, but doesn't really last for long. So value still has a lot to prove, but that move in rates, that move in the value index suggests to me that in the near term, we could see value run a little bit stronger from here versus growth.
All right, Brian, and while this is a Nasdaq-100 video, while we have you here, our resident technician, I want to take a look at Bitcoin and Ethereum if you have a moment, because the moves in this are really, they're really quite powerful. I can't remember another time, especially when we talk about stocks for the most part, that we've seen such a, from a percentage and nominal perspective, these kinds of moves.
Absolutely. This is what we call parabolic. I mean, this is a log scale. This is typically what an algorithmic scale would look like. When you have a log scale and you see this, you're dealing with a whole new animal right here. The big breakout took place in December, I should say early November, when we broke out to new highs versus the last couple of years. So the prior all-time high, as we all know, is back in 2017. Let me go to a longer-term chart. This may be more appropriate for this type of price action. But as we can see, the prior all-time high made back in late 2017 was up at the, I believe it was up around the 19,000 level. But you can just see this move is just gone parabolic. And there's really, at this point, we're at new all-time high, so there's no specific levels to point to say we should expect resistance here. But if you look at the daily RSI, it's at 84 right now. It's pulled back actually from 91 just earlier in the week. So just phenomenal moves. It's, freight train going higher, something tough to get in front of.
Yeah, it is tough to get in front of him. Fundamentally, I understand the reasons why it's moving higher and how it's different than 2017. But as a technician, take away the fundamentals, take away how there's institutional investment and it's not just a retail game anymore. Just by looking at that chart, does it look like it has more room to go here? Like if you took the name off of it, you took the price levels, everything off, just isolating it to the chart, it still looks pretty strong.
I mean, it absolutely looks very strong. If it was your average chart and I saw something like this, I would be a little concerned about the frothiness of it. But when I go further back looking at Bitcoin itself, we've seen it's had much, much more powerful moves. And so, that's certainly something that we could see here now. So I think maybe what would be helpful is to look at the annual performance of Bitcoin. And if we can see back, and let's put on 2021 here, go back to 2010. It tends to, in its brief history, it's had 3 strong years and then a down year, 3 strong years and then a down year, and we're now embarking on the 3rd year of 3 moves to the upside. In the prior 2 3-year moves, the 3rd year has by far been the most powerful move versus the prior 2. So last year we were up 300%. If we go back to 2015, 16, and 17 when it was up 3 years in a row, that middle year was up 120%, and then it ballooned to up 13, almost 1,400%. So not to say that this time we're going to do the same thing. That's obviously an extremely small sample. But the point is we can look back in history of Bitcoin, and a number of times in the last 10 years, it's had moves, let's say 3 different times out of the last 9 or 10 years, it's had annual gains of more than 1,000%. Back in 13, it had it 5,400%. So despite last year's phenomenal move, it's relatively small compared to other years that you can see in this Bitcoin's brief history. Now that you mentioned institutions seem to have an easier path to step in and to purchase, maybe this is the biggest year Bitcoin ever has. Who knows?
Interesting, Brian. Great things to point out. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.